So it's just after 4:30, so I will call to order Town of Front Royal Board of Architectural Review Work Session for August 15th, 2017. So welcome everyone that's here. I've got a quick list. I can't see many faces over these chairs. I apologize. But we do have the EDA and mode developer, Mayor.
And Mr. Tharp?
Mr. Tharp. Okay. So, we are here today to review information submitted with the demolition application submitted by the EDA, and talk about the public hearing that's coming up August 22nd at 7. We're going to gather a lot of information today, but no actions are going to be taken. Yeah. And after our last meeting, we'd even discussed that there may not be any actions taken at the August 22nd meeting. So we will get started. Tonight's meeting, because the last meeting did kind of run away, a lot of tangents, this particular project brings out a lot of discussion. Really like to keep the discussion and questions focused on the application, the demolition application and the historic district. Of course, we'll be respectful to all parties involved and really try to refrain from other conversations that are out of order. Tonight's meeting, we're also going to take a quick 10-minute tour of the Acton Inn. We will recess the meeting here, reconvene there, and there will be waiver of liability. We'll sign those either when we get them. Like we should have them before we go in.
EDA's bringing that form over. We'll meet out in front of the building and have those forms will be there shortly, and then everybody that will be going in the building will need to sign off on that for liability reasons.
Do we just want to recess now? Okay.
We can go ahead and
All right.
recess now.
Excellent. So let's recess and we'll meet there as long as it takes to walk around the corner. A couple minutes.
We're gonna head towards the back first. The first thing I'm gonna point out though is two sections where we have water that has come in and created a couple of stress points. So there's a crack here that goes all the way up to the roof. And then there's more severe water damage and rot in this line here. So when we head down on the end, we're going to look back and we're going to see how the wall is curving in and out as it's not looking straight up from this damage here. You've got full coverage, right? So I want everybody to get a chance to sort of stand right next to this wall. And when you're right next to the wall and you look down, you're going to see the wall is curling out on the bottom and bulging out on the top. And so that first 25 feet of brick wall is having some problems and could be vulnerable to a collapse if the framing on the inside continue to deteriorate or new framing was required. So we'll keep an eye on that. When we're on the inside, you're going to see where the brick wall is crumbling and the floors are rotting from the moisture damage in that area. Is that everybody from around the corner there? Okay. All right, so on the back side, we start at the top, and if you stand farther back, you can see how the cornice is waving from the water damage in this central section. And you can see how some of the headers are falling apart. The wall is crumbling on the inside, and then on the inside you'll see headers that have collapsed as well. So this little section over this window is very dangerous. I mean, I wouldn't stand under that in a rainstorm or anything. So you can start to see some of the sections that are crumbling, and the brick on the outside is harder, and the mortar's been regrouted, but it's the brick on the inside that's rotting from the moisture problems. You'll see it's a lighter color, it's crumbling, falling into the building. Okay, so on this front side, you can see a couple areas over the windows where the rot is occurring. Those headers are rotting out. If you stand across on the other across the street, you'll see that the cupola is leaning a little bit, so there's starting to be some truss failure. But you know, you can see some smaller rot in the brick in here. Not as much as the back and the sides, but I just wanted to point out some of the rot occurring at these cornice bands there. So we'll head around this side. Yeah, they'll need to stand, come on back here. There's a small bit of decay over here, but these two sections are the worst. You know, you can see this brick is coming apart, and on the inside the headers have completely rotted out, and you'll see brick falling on the floor. The floors are rotting where all this moisture is coming through. So just I want you to see from the outside where you're going to see the rot on the inside as we go in. So I'll start. Yes. They have tension cables that keep the brick from falling out. This is climbing down into the crawl space because the floor has been removed. The main floor is completely gone. You climb down into a crawl space, and it's pretty steep, so you'll either have to pass on coming in or have somebody help hold your hand because it's very steep and not, you know, there's no handrails or anything like that. Turn on this headlamp here. Sorry. Let me get down here first to have the light shining. Yeah, it's.
Extreme caution if you're going to go down there. Sure you can handle it.
Yeah. I think. Haven't done this in a while.
You need to
Tight
do
rope
it.
walking.
These
I
are
made
the
it, you can
areas,
make it.
so don't have to go down.
There may be a groundhog in here. Just be aware.
It's basically like going down a ladder.
Is it rabid?
I want to get a like
not.
look around. can,
And then the stairs, it's easier climbing up the main stair. This is the worst of it right here.
well, okay, hold on. Who all wants, I want some more people to at least see this by then, decided that they're really going in.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see about
Yeah, it's a grandma
Look,
in here.
this house.
It looks like he was moved from someplace else, it didn't come from the top.
It was piles.
I think it's just
It's-
previous demolition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like they just moved it from one part of the building to the other because they didn't want to pay for getting rid of it. I don't know if I'm gonna,
You don't have to go down there if you're not comfortable.
well, my shoes don't tie on, they're just clogs, so I think I
It's,
will,
it's pretty sketchy.
I think I will not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should've got a tie on. I thought about
The
it.
mic will come down here later.
Pick one up and-
Doug? Mike? Okay. I can move out of the way here and add a little bit more space.
Need a hand, Doug?
And
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
A little better, thanks. Appreciate it.
I'm going to stand here and listen, if that's okay.
yeah, yeah.
You guys can hear? Can you hear, Aubrey?
We are going to go to the other side and upstairs too. There's, the joists are sagging on the other side of this wall. And then the rock is, you see the rock when you go up to the upper levels.
I guess if I got on my butt, I
Once
could
you got down.
slide down.
Yeah.
It's awful, you're gonna get splinters.
As long as he's cute, it pulls them out.
Jeremy, is the plan, if this was demolished and rebuilt, would they basically put it in the same footprint? Are we
They have not
gonna?
submitted any plans for that.
Oh, okay.
Conceptual drawings.
I'll tell you the,
Just want to look around some more and I'll kind
I'll
of.
give you an answer.
Okay.
Because they're going to go further into the building.
Since I noticed it's right on top of the sidewalk,
Listen to this,
I got
listen to
nothing
the
to put my
question
feet-
and the
No, I'm
answer.
not comfortable, like, with my foot falling through there.
Okay.
Hey, guys, you all may want to listen to the question and the answer. This is a good one.
Right.
yeah, I asked if the building was demolished and rebuilt, would they put it in the exact footprint or would they set back?
Right, so, there's a lot of rot in the joists and bowing. We have we're trying to recycle the joists by flipping them over where they're sagging on the other side here. We'll see that in a minute. The boards that are in the brick, you have to cut them off because they're not going to be good for use. So the building has to get about 1.5 feet thinner, maybe a foot thinner, to recycle the rafters because we're going to lose the ends. That's just the reality, and we would try to do that. If people have a problem with that, then we would use new lumber and use this for more aesthetic choices. But the goal is to reuse the floor joists where we can.
Because that's back when they made real size wood.
Right, it's 3-inch, I believe, heart pine there. And the nails that are in that, you cannot feed these through a mill, and the nails break off when you try to get them out. So they would be used in a rough state the way they are. Again, when we go to the other side, you're going to see the joists are sagging. It's a wider span over there, so we have to flip them over to get the crown on the top. And this is the best of it. When you go upstairs, you see a lot of the wood is rotting from the water damage. Maybe a year or two, this place was in better shape, but the water has kept coming and done more damage. When we go upstairs, you'll see the brick walls are starting to crumble in, and we don't have any footings under this building. It's a stone wall foundation, and so we would be studying whether we could work on top of the stone or not, and that's still to be determined. But that was, the answer is we're trying to reuse the rafters by thinning the building about a foot. The walls would be thinner. The outside thins up, the inside would be about the same because these are 3 brick wide thick, so the walls would be a little thinner with framing and insulation. So I'd like to go to the next room and show you where the ceiling is sagging. You have to step back.
Take good notes.
Take pictures.
Watch out for these test pits here. So if you look up there, you'll see a slight sag. This is a wider room. The boards are the exact same boards and spacing, so it has sagged over time. And so to reuse these, we got to flip them over. Wherever the cross bracing comes in, that can be a problem when we take it apart. But we'd have more bearing points with a central hall layout to break the spans, because this span is too far for this lumber over time. And let's see here. Obviously you can see all the wiring the plumbing is gone. Here's the rot on this level in one of the locations we pointed out on the outside. And again, they did test pits so that you can see there are no footings under this, under these walls here. So that's, yeah, there were these 2 sections that we looked at outside with the rot. And yeah, some of this is coming apart in here. See that? And we'll head upstairs to see where the other areas where we pointed out from the outside.
What about the trim work? Would that be saved?
Yeah, that can be saved and reused. And there's some newel posts as well.
Looks like it's got 20 coats of paint on it.
Yeah, and there's some wallpaper. You'll see a lot of wallpaper upstairs. Okay.
Again, I've been in touch with
I do wish that everybody could see. Yeah.
Well, we'll take video. It's my job, yeah.
Hope you're getting hazardous foods back.
Yeah. All right, so I'm just going to hit the highlights. So this was one of those headers. The brick is crumbling. We're down to one out of 3 brick layers still remaining, and then all the rot with the wood. And again, and then it's in the floor below as well. So that's one of the areas where the walls are coming down.
Might not want to go too much further.
No.
I mean, there's a lot of that kind of thing.
Tell you right now.
me just go to every room here, you'll see.
Coordination over here, I need to see to keep my balance.
This is not the worst of it. You'll just see there's just a lot of this kind of thing here. Okay, so that's, we'll head to the next room. There's a really bad area.
Yeah, this one right here.
Which one you want to do it? Which bedroom you want?
Well, is there mold in here?
I'm sure there is.
Yeah, I just can get out of here. I haven't started wheezing yet, but. Yeah, but I don't want to breathe this stuff.
Yeah, there's another one, so that's pretty quick here. See some of the rot there. But I want you to see the wall that's collapsing. There's a brick wall that's starting to collapse as we move forward.
Roger, you may want to take a picture of that. I wouldn't want to try to rebuild this thing. This thing is heavy.
And then the floor. Some of this up there. Yeah, I just Alright, so here's some flooring.
There's where that spot outside you showed us that had the,
Right, so all this above, we'll go up one more level. Alright, so this is some brick crumbling from above. But we'll go, the worst wall's upstairs, I'll show you that. Alright, quick run upstairs, the worst of it's upstairs.
Yeah, well, I'll take your word for it.
I'll take your word for it.
There's one wall, you can see the brick is falling off the wall.
All right, maybe I'll just get it. Jeremy, if you're going up with the flashlight.
Alright, so this is not good. Right there. I guess there was a fire too, I'm not really.
you can see where the
Yeah,
charcoal on the wood right
Yeah,
there. Show me a light right over there. And
Yeah,
There's a question, would you be able to save the banisters?
yes, yes. Okay.
Yeah, they look pretty good.
Here's the brick over here. So, you can see the brick is crumbling, falling inward. Yeah. The outside brick is strong. It's the inside brick is typically made, if you get right up and be careful, see how it's just crumbling. The outside brick is made typically stronger than the inside brick, and it's just, the roof leaks over time, it's just falling apart. And, you know, once you try doing any new framing for showers or stairs, you have less holding on to the brick, and that's where you have to spend a lot of money to hold it up in place and rebuild it. So, you know, there's some more of that.
give me some light down on that there.
I think there's some problems in that front room too. But, see how the brick is collapsing? This is the west side. So the interior layers are just crumbling. You know, that's more that, you know,
Just like the brick is just flaking
yeah,
off.
it's the internal layers are made not as sturdy typically, and the moisture is just it's just crumbling. Yeah, look at that. I mean, it's like powder. It's called punky. It's not. It's worse than punky because it's not even holding its own weight. So that I'm looking at the outside layer through 2 layers of basically Swiss cheese right there. So it looks better on the main level, obviously, but when you get upstairs, it's just a different animal.
No. We'll take that off the table right now.
What'd you think, Dewey?
I have his quote already.
Yeah, you can't use that quote. This place is fine.
Show us that again here. Show us-
This is just a wall in there, and I went upstairs in one of the other rooms while you were there. There really is.
They're all like that.
They're all like this. And this is from the downstairs. So the upstairs was
Yeah,
the same
the
way.
lighter the orange, the weaker the brick is.
Yeah.
Again, the outside brick is built, it's a stronger brick made that way, but the interior 2 layers are made differently and they're not holding up to the moisture.
Maybe.
So you'd like to recess and reconvene?
Yeah, we can go ahead and recess this tour and we'll reconvene back in our meeting room on the 2nd floor.
2 or 3 years since we've done the swap, we have tried to market that property to individuals or developers that would renovate the property. We've had 4 active inquiries where we thought we had someone that was going to renovate the property and make it into the apartments and a restaurant. Every time we got to the finish line, it always came to the point where they didn't have enough money to do the renovation. We had applied for the Industrial Revitalization Fund grant. We were denied that because Front Royal does not meet the qualifications of a highly distressed community. We are only considered a distressed community. So we didn't qualify for that. We applied twice for that grant. That is a grant that is up to $600,000. The EDA would have had to maintain ownership of that building for 10 years to be able to get that grant. If at any time during that 10-year period we sold it to the developer or to a private citizen, we have to pay that money back at that point. So when the 2 developers that were going to renovate the property realized that that grant was not an option, that's when they backed out of it and decided that it just wasn't economically feasible for them. So when Mode came on board and looked at the building, their original thought was, hey, maybe we can renovate this. And Jim, if I speak out of turn, you can correct me. We can renovate this and make this work. And as they got more into it and started consulting with Jim Burton and some other architectural engineers, it just did not make economic sense for them to do that. And that's what brought us to this application. We had a real live prospect for the property that has the means to complete the project. So that's what brought us to this application.
The pictures and all that were given to us, they are not what you're presenting to us anymore?
That is still on the table. That's a draft. I mean, nothing has been finalized. That was just a draft picture. They took the original photo of the original building and tried to recreate that with a new building. So that's just a draft that has not been approved by anyone at this point.
But my question is, that's what you were thinking of doing, or something like it?
Yes.
Our meeting we had, I guess it was last week, and Michael had pointed this out very clearly and I guess a little more succinct than I am. But we were presented this application for demolition, and we all were like, okay, why? And to rebuild something else. So that led us to our next question, what is that something else? And I feel like that's where this application just left us hanging. And personally, I'm struggling with, if I approve demolition, what's going in its place? Because we've had other applicants come before us, not with a demolition permit, but with a building permit, ready to go. Funds, a plan, a vision, an architect, finishes, and by essentially approving the building permit, that approved the demolition that was required to build that.
To do that project.
To do the project. So that's where I feel this fell a little short, and it left us just with a lot of questions. I don't want to say, here's your demolition permit, and then just wait and see. Because I'm assuming it's right in the middle of the historic district. Anything that's rebuilt in its place will be right back here before us. And I want to approve projects in a timely manner, but if there's no real construction plans, no building permits, holding up demolition, there's no construction waiting, and that's where my concerns are lying.
We really just don't know what is in the can of worms we'd be opening.
And that's where we end up with all these questions.
As far as what it is going to be, that picture you have is what the plan is. We understand, with that being said, that there could be changes to that you guys require, that the town council requires. And as far as getting, I'm a little confused now. If you're wanting a building permit, for us to pull a building permit before,
How close are you to getting one?
I mean, that's a process.
You're saying this
that-
rendering is the plan, those aren't construction plans, so.
I guess that's a question for Jeremy that I would have is,
And I think that's where, I guess, Michael was leading a little last time, with there's a lot of questions.
and that's a question of mine. I don't know if I can
Okay.
get a building permit with a building being there.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that question. That's a Jeremy and a David Bean question.
Can I step in?
Absolutely.
I think what we're trying to convey is here, we've got 2 or 3 different versions of the same story. When we go to look at the other projects that we have, it's a full project. And like you were saying, we've got a plan set, we've got a goal, we've got finishes, we've got all of that. All we have now is a demo. And like I said last week, we've got a number of different versions of why it can't be done. And then we have the main one from, is this Mode?
Yes.
Okay, so Mode and the Carter Burton Architecture they're the same entity?
Jim is the architect. Jim is here
Okay.
and can answer
Okay.
those questions that you guys had from last week.
But we have a thing where it could be an additional $400,000 plus or minus depending on the final approved schematic plan. We don't have the schematic plan. So the only paperwork we have saying that it's either feasible or not feasible is still going to be default back down to the skylight management. Do we have anything from mode that would be the equivalent of this, where we come down with a list of items saying, okay, well, this is what we've got, this is what goes into this cost, versus saying, okay, we've got one of the oldest buildings in Front Royal that we're going to demo.
I'm not going to answer that. Jim
Right.
can answer
Sure.
that.
So our layout required an addition in the back of the building.
Yes.
So it won't relate to the Skyline proposal. So
In what regards? Because the Skyline proposal does account for the addition I was thinking here, because it accounted for the extra 2,000 square foot.
but
usable
it's a
space.
renovation though? Is that right? Are their numbers are based on a renovation concept?
Well, they ran both sides of it, and on one side it was, actually their first line that says that the building can actually be restored. Then they gave us the numbers going down the line of why it could be restored versus at the very end. Do you have a copy of this?
I don't have that with me. Their square footages were different
Right.
than ours, is that right?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But the thing is, we're being asked to
Right.
have a decision on basically this letter. And I, we did do a walkthrough, and I understand that as well. But in order for us to have a decision, an educated decision, where basically everyone in the town of Front Royal knows about the Afton Inn, I would almost like to see what your version of this is, so that we can make an educated decision based on the numbers.
Right. So we have the schematic design phase was listed as the next phase, if your group is comfortable with demoing the building. The look on the outside, that's the look.
Okay.
The section discusses it's loft-style apartments, so those are located in the diagram, and
Oh, absolutely.
so the layout, it's not getting down to, and then it's showing the sample of the quality of the bathrooms and kitchen.
Oh, absolutely.
In the images.
I understand that, because I'm actually in the industry. My point is, we've got this saying, and this is not what we're using now, but this was what was submitted by the EDA to make a decision based on this information. We were given this as we walked into the BAR meeting. And then we have their other paperwork that goes along the same lines saying, okay, well, this can be done. And then we get, again, no information that's relevant to us other than some schematic drawings and some wonderful bathrooms.
I mean, there's a budget spreadsheet that we have and can send that tonight, and it's showing our budget in categories.
That would be helpful, having the build versus going in there, shoring up the inside of it, taking that 2-layer brick out.
Right.
And building it modern from the inside out. But it would still retain the building, because the concept drawings that were provided by the EDA, that's not in line with actually what the building looks like at all.
Right, we're not putting a brick building back up. It's a full demo. And then we're building it's a traditional stucco framed design with siding in the back. So that's not a brick, that's not a brick design.
I think that's the point I'm making.
Okay. And I'd have to double check on whether it says stucco, and I apologize if it doesn't.
I believe it does.
Okay, but our goal is to reuse the rafters, thin the building up that foot, so we can do that, because the rafters that are in the punky brick is rotten. So the outside comes in a little bit, the inside will be approximately the same size that it is now, and we have to add more bearing walls to break the span up.
Absolutely.
And,
Or if you don't use, you go with a more modern LVL type material, or something that can
Right,
span
right.
the span. My biggest concern isn't that you're reusing the floor joists, you know, because that's, once the finishes go on, that's going to be absolutely irrelevant. But what we are looking at is one of the oldest buildings we have, like I've said before, and going down the line, looking at, there's going to be X amount of dollar being spent trying to surgically demo the building versus going and keeping the exterior layer of the building, going and shoring it up from the inside out, because we still have that 2-score brick that we're going to be using to maintain and support the interior structure anyways.
So the 3 layers of brick, the outside layer is good. The
Absolutely.
inside 2 layers are starting to
poor.
crumble.
Right.
I brought in Sneed Co. out of Boyce. They specialize in these kinds of jobs. And their quote is $2 million to get the shell of the existing building up to code, not even plumbing and electrical work, before partitions. They've seen projects like this that are not done properly, where corners of the building can crumble even after several months worth of work if it's not done well. So it's just more time and more money. And I had said maybe $400,000 plus or minus more than a new build. You know, it's very possible that with the $2 million quote from Sneed, it'd be a lot more than that. And it's just, it doesn't work financially unless there's huge grant money to preserve
we don't have
that.
the actual finite numbers.
Yeah,
we
but
don't know what the numbers are. There's
right.
a lot of may be this or
Right.
it could be that.
Our quote is 2.1 million, but
To restore it or
no,
to raise
brand
it?
new build. Demo.
That was nowhere.
Demo, ours is a demo the building and build from scratch, and that's what we've been proposing. Yeah, that's
Okay, so from our last meeting, we did have at least a framework of a list of questions, and we've sort of been bouncing around these. Yes.
Well, yes, I was just wondering about the question, why stucco rather than brick?
We're not even.
Yeah, we're not even.
We're
to that
not even
point,
there
but yeah,
yet.
I agree.
That would be, I guess, on the application for, I guess, what's being built later. We're still trying to look at the demolition application. So I guess let's see how we can answer at least the questions from our last meeting, because I feel like we're still in some vague territory. We were just discussing how many square feet are we dealing with, because the application, one of them had 8,600 square feet, and then the Skyline report had 7,800. I think Michael had found that. Do we have an actual number on
Yeah.
existing and new?
So I remeasured just to double check, and yeah, it's 8,658 square feet. The Skyline, I believe they did not include the thickness of the walls. When you
Okay.
go 3 stories, that they're 12-inch thick walls. I think that's the difference that you're seeing.
And then we were just talking about this question number 2 that we had. Can you clarify the financial cost difference between renovation and the demolition and construction? Because we were, in the application that was submitted, we were looking at new construction at 1.5 to 1.8 million, and then we saw a renovation number at 1.6. And now you're dropping 2-point-something million, so there's still a lot of numbers that are changing.
So our numbers have fit and finish included, all the bathrooms, kitchens, cabinets, commercial kitchen for the restaurant function. and the addition. So our squish, yeah, so that's included as well. And you know, again, sort of the flower box handrails and the French casements, the you know, some of the beer garden terrace, the living roof ideas, and parking, and you know, civil work. The sidewalk has to be reworked and things like that.
So what, I guess my question is, do we have a tighter number for the cost of the new construction? Because we keep talking about reusing rafters, and as far as this group is concerned, interior parts and pieces mean much less than historic facades. And so when we're being told you can reuse the rafters, you could tear the whole middle of the building out and start from scratch, and it wouldn't make a difference. But once that historic facade is gone, that's when we care. So when we're presented with an argument that it costs too much, but we're saving the rafters, there's just a lot of
Well, we're trying to reuse the brick on the wing and the porch facade and the brick pavers, and where we can expose existing rafters, we would try to do that, newel posts, window trim. We want to reuse as much as we can, and but it's...
How would that be reused in the stucco?
Well,
I'm looking at this
right.
rendering, I don't see brick.
So the side porch under the roof there, and the wing and the kitchen wing with the chimney and the pavers, that's all the brick there. And then we're trying to keep the verticality of the building and not, you know, doing like a brick one story and then something on top of it. And if the building needed to be brick, we could talk about that too. It would be a small.
But is there a number, I guess?
Oh,
was our question.
To make
What,
it,
the cost of this?
that's the 2.1 million,
Okay.
right?
Versus restoring it.
Right.
And then what's the restoration cost?
It's getting closer to 2.7, something like that, plus or minus. Sneed gave us a quote for $2 million for the shell to be brought back to code.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's not any mechanical, plumbing, electrical, partitions. So 2.7 easily, you know, it could be that high very easily.
Okay, you know, we've asked to try and get some idea of exactly what's planned, and you're just like, well, this. And then you said something about a living roof and French window boxes, and all. I can sort of see the French window boxes. You threw out these figures, and yet, and like she said, the interior really isn't our focus. But you know, that's a big number that you are throwing around, and yet I don't have a good grasp. And, you know, living roof and French window boxes, I'm not thinking that they're really appropriate for a signature historic look.
Well, we can do a tin roof, that's fine, and, you know, that's not a big deal. The window boxes and French windows, we have that at our office in Berryville. We won the 15-year Main Street Facade Award for preservation with that look. You know, it adds color and texture to the facade with the plants being added seasonally, and the handrails allow you to open the windows and not fall out, obviously. We're at 11 West Main Street. It's a really attractive building if you want to take a look at that.
What year is your building?
It's over 100 years old. It used to be a Masonic temple, and it's got a stucco paint on it. But yeah, it was a preservation and change of use project.
So you could understand where we would appreciate more preservation.
No, I agree. I wrote the guidelines for Middleburg, design guidelines, and I've done preservation jobs. My parents live in the Mercer House in Aldie, Virginia, and I understand it. It's just, if you go inside the building and go upstairs, you'll see that the brick is crumbling, and it's gotten worse in the last couple of months as it continues to fall in. Again, time and money, you can preserve it, but it's probably an extra $400,000, $500,000, $600,000.
You know, and we don't have anything to base that on.
Well, I have a bid from Sneed Company out of Boyce for $2 million
Right. To do the shell.
to do
without
the
inside,
shell,
right.
yeah.
We've gone through
And I
that.
can't do the rest of the project for $100,000. It's just, but.
Is Sneed a historical preservation?
Yes,
Type-
they started in Richmond in the Chaco Bottom with a lot of their projects. Started working more in Middleburg, did a job in Waterford, a restoration job, and they're in downtown next to the railroad there, but they specialize in that kind of work.
Now, CarterBurton.com, they actually have a row house restoration project in their portfolio. Was this very similar to that? Because the exterior of that house had been repointed.
Right. Yeah, I was the architect on that, and basically the difference on that project is that the other houses connected on the sides
Right.
held the building up. When we started cutting new drains and shower pans and about a third of the floor joists were removed because they were riddled with new drain lines, and so that was well over $2 million project for residential use, not 6 different kitchens and 6 different bathrooms for apartments and commercial kitchens.
Now, is the commercial kitchen, is that where you're, as the owner of the building, you're supplying the kitchen to the new owner or for rent? I mean, wouldn't that be a build-to-suit thing where the actual new tenants or new owners would build their own kitchen?
The goal would be to
Stub it out?
to set it up in the cost so that it's done at the same time with the mechanical system, and it would affect the rent of that tenant in the end.
So there would be no build-to-suit, so we're gonna
There
take that number
there
right
would be style finish, but the commercial kitchen and the makeup air and how it, the setbacks from the building would be, the goal is to have the tenant in hand before the work is proceeding.
Okay, well, all right, I think we've gotten our hands on cost.
The
Question
answers
3 is
itself.
what we're doing now. Question 4. We had a question, if the EDA was amenable to require a performance bond from the developer to guarantee demolition is complete once started.
The EDA did submit a letter right before we started, when we
Okay.
adjourned, reconvened. Yeah, so looks like it's addressed in writing in the letter. Jennifer should be able to answer that question.
We wanted to address everything in writing.
Sure.
As well as
Thank you.
be here. We have no problem asking for that. Legally, I don't want to say we can require it and then an attorney come back and say, no, you can't, but we have no problem asking for that to be part.
Doesn't Warren County require that? Jeremy? I mean, if I go pull a permit in Prince William County, I have to have a bond with Prince William County. Isn't that something that zoning would be taking care of when they go to actual pull permits? that
It's required for public improvements
Right.
on public property.
We have to have those for any roads, water, sewer stuff we're putting in. We always have performance
'Cause
bonds.
you
But
guys
I
know
don't
how to
know,
build.
I don't know legally what, if I'm allowed. Yes, we would ask for that. I just don't know the legality of requiring that. But we have no problem doing that. And number 5, you had kind of addressed that earlier. I guess we thought the process for this was to come before this committee. If you guys say we would be in favor of demo, then that would be the next step of getting the schematic design of what the new property would look like, what the new building would look like. That I have never been through this process before, so I don't fully understand it. But we had assumed that we would come here with a demo application. If everyone felt that was the way we were headed, then the next step was the schematic design of what the new building would look like to be submitted to this committee.
It can be done either way.
Okay.
I think with this particular project, life happens, and my fear here is if the permit is approved, the building's demolished, life happens, and then none of this does. Like, I don't want the building to come down prematurely if something is gonna happen. And we also don't want to approve this not knowing a better idea of what's coming in its place. My question, this is just from personal reference, how long has this been in planning, like this design?
How long have we?
4 months.
Okay.
Like that, 3 months.
It's been in every paper.
Yeah. But as, you know, I consider myself an industry professional. No one has ever submitted a floor plan on a Google aerial map. Like, that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, it doesn't look complete. And so putting together a project of this size could take a very long time. And so if the demolition is issued and we're nowhere near final plans, it's a timing issue for me.
If it helps, we built that in a model, a 3D model, and the section and the section cut is through the model. So we have a 3D model already, but the rendering is just a more attractive look to see what it would actually look like.
That's another meeting.
And that was the basis of, I think, question number 5.
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
that
I was kind of looking at 5.
If the VAR is amenable to approving the demolition of the building and that concept of tearing it down and reconstructing it, and then, you know, that could be the action for the VR to approve it conditional that before we actually issue the demolition permits and zoning permits for demolition, we'll actually have approved plans. Because right now, and to answer your question, Jennifer, you haven't submitted any plans, so I can't dictate that timeline process until you've submitted an application. What we have is the demolition application. So that would be my recommendation, is if you do decide on approving the demolition, consider making it conditional, so that at least takes away the uncertainty from the developer, I think, about the ability to be able to demolish it. And then we could just focus on bringing forward the plans, getting the details of whether it's brick or stucco or whatever design we have for the windows.
And for our group specifically, it's the facade, like the nice bathrooms, commercial kitchens, all those interior niceties. They're nice, but they're not what we're worried about at all. We're really concerned about all of those exterior features and how well they may or may not go in with all of the buildings around it. But I like the conditional portion. So I really don't know what the answer to 5 is. We would like it, but who would decide if this could happen, or would this be in one of
Number
our
5.
motions? Yeah.
Well, I think theoretically, if you're okay with the concept of demolition and then reconstruction, then you can approve the demolition conditional on final submittal of plans and review and approval of those plans by the board before we issue the demolition permit. So in other words, the building's not going to be torn down and then we're sitting around for months without any approved plans, not knowing what's going to happen. We'll just have approved a concept to demolish it and rebuild it, but then that won't be final until those plans are submitted and reviewed and approved by you. So that way you can just kind of get past the demolition part of it and just focus on the reconstruction of the building.
And I guess that really ties into number 6. All of these, I think, are starting to circle back on each other. And number 6 is also a timing issue, again, that construction begins. So,
Just as a side, the EDA puts time restrictions on each contract that it has with a developer.
okay,
Legally, it's 24 months from the time that they start construction to completion. We do extensions if there are circumstances that they didn't get town permits in time. DEQ doesn't do approvals in time. We can do extensions, but there has to be a reason.
okay.
So we do handle that in most of our contracts.
I talked a little bit about number 8 as well, when we were asking to elaborate on what materials of the existing building would be used in reconstruction. So my takeaway is the reused materials is really this, we're just going to call it the red brick-faced area. Any other portions, I believe there was other materials inside. Is there plan for salvage and reuse of any of that?
On the inside, right. And, if we can expose the rafters on the lower level, we would do that for, while meeting fire codes. And,
But all the other exterior, that's just fresh, new stucco,
right,
iron.
and traditional stucco and siding in the back.
Okay.
Is that why it's
I would
Yeah.
also study brick in the back.
Why?
But if brick was required for the front, we don't have any problem with that.
I have a question. It's somewhat unclear, just maybe because of the coloring. The addition that was put on the front of the building that's kind of pushed out into the yard towards Royal Avenue, is that the same color? Is that remaining?
That's new construction, right. The wing,
In the
the
same footprint?
kitchen wing, approximately, yes.
Okay.
And because the tree there, you can't see, does it have a flat roof or what? It's got this giant
It's a little unclear in this, but I
Right.
think
tower or something.
That's the chimney from the pizza oven, but yeah.
Okay, so that's still, again, part of the design and the facade that we're really focused on. There's a lot of parts, I guess, that we're looking at very critically. Okay. And I guess we started this meeting earlier with marketing the building over the last 2 years. I'm not so familiar with
Did you ever put a sign out front saying it was for development?
So here's the issue with the EDA. When we put up a sign, we are considered that now we're competing with private developers. So it's a double-edged sword with us. If we put up a sign, we're competing with private developers. We get kickback from that. There was a sign put up at the beginning of this, and we got kickback from that sign that we were competing with other Main Street property owners. So we had to remove that sign at that time.
What did the sign say?
For sale, for redevelopment. I can't remember the exact wording. We worked with Steve Burke at that time to put that sign up, and we had to remove that sign. It's just like when we put a sign up at the former police department. There was some issues with that sign. So it's always a double-edged sword with us of marketing properties. We have to tread a fine line with that. As a quasi-governmental agency, you do not want to be competing with private developers or private property owners. So yes, we did try that route. That did not work. We did market it through our ICSC marketing tool. Any of the trade shows that we went to, we marketed this property. The IEDC website, it was always on that. The Virginia Scan website. And with local developers, we tried to work with several of those. We have marketed this property with a historic group that we're involved with. We have 3 trade shows a year, and it was part of every trade show that we went to. So we have marketed this property extensively.
Was there, I'm assuming there was a marketing budget, and
There was no budget for this property. So it was, the EDA paid the expenses on this property. The town would reimburse the EDA at the time the building was sold. Whatever money was recovered from that, whatever the EDA had spent, the EDA would recover, the remaining portion would go to the town. So there was never a budget. It just came out of the EDA's
And that goes
budget.
for basic maintenance and upkeep as well?
The town does the maintenance and the upkeep on the property. We maintain the liability insurance, the marketing, any of the interior stuff that takes place in that, the EDA is responsible for.
I guess that goes back to our tour. We walked into a building that was literally full of trash.
Mm-hmm.
That's just terrible marketing.
Holes in the roof.
Yeah. Okay. It just doesn't seem like there was an effort, I guess, on the interior to like make that property even look viable.
So you can even see the potential.
I mean, I understand if the floor is bad and you have to take it out. Someone built a ladder. Well, why not build some stairs? It's the same amount of effort. So this is where this question is about due diligence to market this, and I feel like that building got maybe a little shortchanged being full of trash. Go ahead. Yes, please.
Well, it's not really that. I mean, Aubrey was nice enough to come to this meeting, and she does have some expertise. Can she maybe just
yes.
give her opinion or ideas or anything for clarity?
Being that I'm a historic preservationist and architectural historian, I value that building, any building, and I think it sounds like not a lot of effort has been put in and a commitment to one of your most historic buildings in your historic downtown. I don't know how much tax credits have been pushed. Tax credits are a huge benefit in Virginia and hugely successful. One of the most successful programs in the nation, actually. I've been in buildings much worse. I've been in, but it all comes down to time, money, and commitment. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I don't have a say, I don't have a dog in the fight, so to speak, but I do encourage that there are ways, and we've talked about this with other, we go to different localities. I'm also the certified local government coordinator. Stanton, I know you said you spoke about this. They sought out grants on top of tax credits, and they were able to restore a building that was in much worse condition than that. And now it is a wonderful space, meeting space, the community art museum, everything. So I just encourage, that's where I come at, and I'm shouldn't be expected to come at it any differently because that's my job. But I think, you know, getting the numbers, you should ask the questions of, you know, restoration, what will it cost to, when everything's said and done, and you've already brought this up today a little bit, after everything's said and done, what will the new build, the demo, all the pretty fancy things that are going to be done versus restoration. How many other companies besides the one did they seek bids from for restoration? Yeah, those types of questions.
Stabilization of the exterior.
That's correct. See, as a locality, sometimes the first step is just stabilizing the building and getting it to a point, you know, where it continues, stopping the deterioration from getting worse, and then going from there and just having a plan. So I you know, sometimes hindsight, you know, is.
I just sort of feel like we're being asked, this is the only choice, is demolition. And being as a prominent and as historic building, I find that really heart-wrenching, and I think it would be very detrimental to the look of our town on that corner. So if there would be some way we could make it feasible to do a 3-wall heaping of the exterior, fix that up, and then the addition on the back and what goes on in the inside. But do you think there might be money that would help make it possible?
I would not, we don't have money for the tax credits.
I
I would
know.
say, take a plan to the tax credit folks in Richmond and say, what can we do, what's allowable? Of course, tax credits require restrictions that you restore the building, that you maintain the building's historic integrity, so keeping historic materials. On the exterior, you know, you've got a pretty much blank slate in the interior. So, you know, those types of things are open to you. Those options should be explored for what is one of your oldest, if not the oldest building in your downtown historic, one of the oldest buildings?
One of the oldest.
Historic. It bookends your district. So if any building needs to be at least given the chance, it's this one.
But once again, it sounds like we almost need to have the vision of what they would like to do if they're granted the money. Because, you know, and I understand that it comes down to economics, but I would really like to see there be a way to maintain the historic facade and have somebody be able to develop the building so it's you know, not just sitting on the corner, it's actually doing something for the economy. And the facade to me that's the big thing. And if there is potentially money out there, I'd like to see it at least attempted. But
Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. Nancy, Julie, we've been asking a lot of questions. Do you have any questions that, I'm sure you do. You look like you have a question.
I think a lot has been covered.
Okay.
And,
Because this is our session.
and we'll continue next week.
next week is the public hearing where the public gets to talk. We will have a work session afterwards. At that point in time, we can do a ruling, or if we feel that there's still some more questions that might be able to, or be answered or thought on a little bit more, we can push it back, but they've asked that we don't extend it, you know, too long. But next week is public hearing and then an actual work, a meeting.
There was a thought to have the public hearing, and then on our next regular Tuesday meeting, if we don't have a conclusion of the public hearing, but not to push our decision past that next meeting. That was my understanding.
Yeah.
Question? None?
Observation, thought?
Because we've gotten to our list.
There isn't too much answers right now, other than getting the plan with something, like, the design of that exterior house gonna be, if that's gonna be it, yeah, that's not really.
That and the cost analysis,
Yeah.
restoration, an actual, instead of conjecture.
All right, so, yes.
All right, we're asking for numbers. If they're doing numbers on this. Are we asking them to do work on something that's not gonna fly?
I would say that numbers on that would not be
An accurate figure.
no, because I can clearly tell that we have a lot to say about the proposed
Facade.
facade, but we're not looking at that today. But we're very interested in getting more of that facade detail. And that goes back to, again, what Jeremy was saying about making the demolition contingent on the,
Contingent on approval of plans.
yes. Yeah, it was number 5.
I mean, just personally, what's presented here, I do not think it is particularly compatible with what was there or what's around it. And so I would have grave reservations. So just, not that we want to get into that today, it's just I'm not going to ask you to do work and come up with figures with the assumption that we're okay, at least, because, I don't want you to have to do work that, on something that's not going to fly. I guess that's one reason why we kind of wanted to see
Yeah.
more
That wasn't answered.
Okay.
information and details with the numbers. And I just don't want you to have to do work unnecessarily, but I have grave reservations on that.
I think what I would be interested in knowing for future meetings and moving forward with this application specifically, do we have any numbers on grant applications for historic preservation? Because we're saying there's tax credits and there's other monies available. Do we have, other than the one where, extreme, I'm forgetting all of the
Highly
words.
distressed.
Yes, not distressed, but highly distressed.
We
I
do
mean,
have an application from a developer that looked at the tax credits. I will have to get
Is
their
that
permission.
just one tax credit? Like, how
Oh, no,
broad of a
he-
search?
he
I'd
applied
really be
for-
interested to see.
I will need to
that.
get his permission to share that.
Could you resubmit those? Because we've done a lot of historic studies in downtown, and the community development block grant found the downtown to be full of blight. And this is a side point really entirely, but that grant application, its foundation is historic preservation and facade improvement. And that application is sitting on someone's desk in Richmond right now.
Now, which grant is this?
Community development block grant.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I thought you meant one that we
And
were.
my
apply for.
fear sitting here right now is if we tear down one of our oldest buildings, that application will go in the trash. And
No one will
everything,
get money.
we've got 24 property owners that are willing to invest in
We have two
facade
of those
improvements.
properties, so we
Right.
understand
So
completely.
there's a lot to lose right there. So I'd really be interested to see all the details and have they been flushed out for this grant money? Because we're looking at 2.1 new, 2.7-ish restoration. Well, what if there's 600,000 in grant money, and can someone get the calculations on the tax credits? Like,
We do have those numbers.
okay,
We do.
I'd really like to see how those fit into the final numbers.
I will email that developer to get permission to share that, and if he gives me that permission, I will send that to Jeremy
Okay.
tomorrow.
Any other questions? All right, well, I guess if there are no more questions for today, we can adjourn this work session, yes. Thank you,
all for coming
everyone,
again.
for coming. I appreciate you
And
all
the
being
input.
here.
This, I think, is yours, Jeremy.
One was half.